All right, what's going on? So, yesterday, first of all, let me give you some respect, um, Pastor Dow. Let me give you some respect because I do listen to a lot of your stuff. You have been right on a lot of things, and there's some things that's just opinionated. That oh my goodness, there's some things that's just opinionated that I don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not supposed to agree with everything, nor are you supposed to agree with everything. But what you did do was you said, if you're wrong in any way, shape, form, or fashion, then tell you, right? But there was too much stuff that could have went both ways, and there's some things that you were wrong on that you can't type. Although you would have read it and whatnot, you can't type it. So I took the liberty of taking some notes, as you can see here, and I just wanted to address some things really quickly. I'm not going to make this long. So, like I said, this is with all due respect. This is man-to-man conversation. Um, so you were talking about what's going on in society. First of all, where you're wrong at is the media access. When you're talking about doing your own research, your research only goes as far as the media, as far as the information that they will allow to be public. There's some information that they don't allow to be public, which is then when you have to use your intuition and your sight, and you have to be a part of whatever's going on that you're speaking about. Otherwise, you're looking from the outside in, and most of the time that misleads people. Right, that'll mislead somebody faster than anything else. When you say do not talk religion and politics, and you say people say they don't talk religion and politics, but they live it. You're absolutely right about that. That I have no disagreement with. People don't realize that not only do they live it, it's in their ideology. They were born, they were raised in it, and they operate it in their daily lives in a way that they don't understand. Right, and that's something that you got to explain. Now, I don't do the whole Patreon thing because when it comes to information, I don't charge for information, whether it's $1 or 50 cents or whatever. I get censorship, I understand that, but once you start understanding something very important like words or spells, you learn how to talk around things, and those who have an ear, let them hear, right? So let me explain to you about the Floyd situation, the George Floyd situation, and how you're not understanding certain intricacies of it. You said the police around him, that the police around him didn't intervene. Let me explain to you why they didn't intervene. It's twofold, right? It's a little bit deeper than just the twofold, but because of time restraints, I'm just going to give you two pieces of this spectrum. Number one, there's the Police Bill of Rights. That Police Bill of Rights protects them from being prosecuted and whatnot like regular civilians, right? But it also can work against them in the sense where they could be kicked off the force, lose their job, be ostracized, blackballed, things of that nature. So the first universal principle is always self-preservation. Somebody's always going to be more worried about their self and their situation than they are everything on the outside, or you for that matter, right? I don't mean you as in you. I mean people in general. It is hard to be selfless. It is easy to be selfish. So since you're naturally selfish and self-preservation is the first thing that you think of, in their minds, they know that things are wrong, right? They know that things are wrong to a certain extent. They also have been socialized. This is the second part. So Police Bill of Rights and socialized. They have been socialized through social engineering. We know about social engineering. It works in a way that there are triggers that shut on and shut off certain things in certain situations. And when somebody has been trained in an area, all it takes is those things, those switches to be flipped for them not to act the way that you think they should act, or for them to act in a way that you think they shouldn't act. Now, you as the outside who hasn't been trained in this particular area, it's one thing to be in the military. I was in the military. First things calm. So it's one thing to be trained in the military area. It's another thing to be trained as a police officer. It's another thing to be trained as a police officer in a certain area. So there's certain triggers that they have that shut their activity off, their humane side, right? They have to look at certain things as savages and this, that, and the third. It's a part of the teaching. Now, does the teaching need to change? Absolutely. When you're talking about the way that the communities are policed, it needs to change completely. But I'm just speaking to what you were speaking to. The reason why they didn't act is because it would have affected them and their families and their paychecks in a negative way. Now, what you're speaking is you want people to fall on the sword, and eventually, if enough people fall on the sword, then things will change. Now, if I'm wrong about that, then correct me. But that's what it sounds like. And if that's not it, then you're talking about this tribalism, as in blacks, whites, this, that, and the third, holding people accountable that are like you, right? Skin tone like you. So you see another person with the same skin tone as you, you automatically identify them as black, and therefore they should be holding other black people accountable when you're talking about black on black crime, white on white crime, like you spoke about Dylan Roof, and how the white people are not holding them accountable. There are tons of white people that hold him accountable. But what you want is the people in power. That's what you want, because there's a hierarchy in the society. So if the people in power are not holding him accountable, that look like him, and in most people's eyes, I would venture to say that the people who follow you, some of the people that follow you, they look at it as in there's no accountability being held, when in actuality it is. It just depends on how high up the food chain you are. So what you want is the president, government officials, city and state officials to hold white people accountable for white crimes, black people are accountable for black crimes, because then what you're asking for is tribalism. Then what you're asking for is what's going on in Africa. They don't have states. They have individual countries, 52 different countries. And those tribes don't interact with the other tribes in a way that you would think. They are all tribal. They are, what do you call it? They're loyal to their tribe. And all their tribe have different symbols, different understandings, different ideologies. That is social engineering. There's social engineering across the globe, right? And sometimes we like to call it colonization or whatever you want to try to call it. But there's social engineering in every culture, because that's how you have to build the hierarchy. There's social engineering in the military. You don't talk crazy to higher ranking officials than you do than yourself, right? So if I'm a corporal, I'm not going to talk crazy to a master sergeant. That master sergeant been there, done that, and he has a way of doing things. So when I come into his area of responsibility, I have to conform to that area of responsibility. So although these are people, these are Asian people, black people, white people, Spanish people, Italian people, doesn't matter. Although these are people who jump into these different jobs, right, and careers and businesses, they're still socialized under the same thing. So you want to change the hierarchy so that the socialization can follow, because as a king goes, so does the kingdom. So who do we have in these spaces that you want to hold certain people accountable for certain things? And if that's the case, then why talk on it? Why speak on it, right? What's the conversation? If that's not the case, that's not the case, then why talk on it? Why have a conversation? So, and the last thing that you said that was wrong, right? It was wrong. Is silence is a consent, is consent to agreement. It's not. Sometimes you're silenced. You don't agree with anything, but you're not high enough on the totem pole to make a dent. And again, that goes back to what I said about falling on the sword. You want people to fall on the sword, and self-preservation is what they're looking for. If they fall on the sword and they lose their job, they lose their source of income, who's going to come through to pay the bills for them? And don't give the wishful thing of, oh, they can set up a GoFundMe. If the people don't see this as a noble cause, they will not fund you, because money doesn't work like that. Money is energy. That's it. So if they're going to put energy into you, they have to have a reason to put energy into you, not just the simple fact that you rebelled against something. Going back to the socialism part, or socialization of people's minds. When there's certain words, like when you call people dumb, When you say how dumb do you have to be, how stupid do you have to be, how dumb, dormant, docile, disenfranchised, when you say certain words, it shuts off people's minds because they've been socialized with those triggers. So until you can understand language and how to speak around certain triggers, then most of the time your message is not going to go through, right? You can speak out all you want to, and you're speaking out on your platform, but your platform doesn't invoke change the way you want it to because you're not touching the right pieces of hierarchy. You can't rebel against hierarchy and then expect hierarchy to look down and fix things. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. So lastly, the blacks not telling blacks, or to govern, blacks not telling whites how to govern themselves, and vice versa. That goes back to the tribalism thing. You want blacks. When you say blacks, you're not being specific. You're talking about a skin color, which we all know black is a designation. It's not a skin color. So although there are people that share the same skin color, we're not all the same culture. We're not all the same designation. So that's you putting everybody into a melting pot and saying that if you're this, you should be telling these people how to govern themselves, but you're not. Or if you're this, you should be telling your own people how to govern themselves. The only thing that you can govern is your household. So when people ask, well, what are you doing? I govern my household. I govern my children. I govern the way that things run in my household in a manner that does not impede upon other people. So that's my start right there, because this is going to be 18 to 25, maybe 30 years of training these kids of mine to grow up and to become responsible citizens and adults and not go out there in the world and cause havoc. I raised them up in the household that they need to be raised up in order to flourish, to use their mind in every way, shape, form, and fashion, and not try to manipulate or impose their will on other folks. That's the contribution that I need to make. Now, if I can touch other people along the way, then that's what I'll do. So with that being said, that's the only, I can say, thing when you're wrong about certain pieces. It's not that you're wrong about everything. You're wrong about certain pieces. And if you expand upon that and Patreon, I don't know. I have no clue. But I'm talking about the YouTube video itself. So if you want to talk back and forth, that's fine with me. There are some things that have to change, and there are some things that can't change. There's no way to fix them because they're not broken. It's just a way of operating in the society. So anyways, just wanted to drop that on you.